I said it now.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Literary Hour. Uh, I'm Jackie Sayegh, and I'm here with Professor K. Moses Nagbe to discuss another oration. Prof, how are you?
Yes, I'm fine, Jackie. I'm fine.
Are
I'm
you
fine.
ready?
I always try to be.
Yeah. So we're still on this oration. We start last week. We had three. We had your favorite, the woman. What's her name?
Maud.
Yeah,
Maud.
we had um and then we had Anthony W. Gardner.
Yeah.
Yeah, who is
Junior.
the of
Gardner
Garrison W. Gardner, I guess, who was the
Junior.
president.
No, no,
And then we
Junior.
had Junior, yeah, the
Yeah,
son of.
yeah, no, yeah.
We had who was the third? We had
Tue.
um
D2.
yeah, D2. Sorry.
Dimo
Oh, I
Tue.
can't forget that. We had D2.
Oh my
So
God.
we discussed the different themes in that in those three orations. So today we decided that we're going to go even further back. We're going to go to 1860 because a lot of people, I think, they don't know a lot about Alexander Cromwell, but he did give a 26 speech 1860. And when I put the poster on, a lot of people were writing that they will be listening because it's going to be African English language versus indigenous languages. So we're going to talk about it because that's almost the entire topic of his oration. But we're going to discuss that. I put the topic because I thought some people would go and read it. I hope some of you found the speech and that you read it. But today, please participate in a discussion. We're going to talk about his speech. But first, we're going to tell you a little bit about Alexander Cromwell. I'm going to read a little bit from Wikipedia. Alexander Cromwell was born March 3rd, 1819. He died September 10th, 1898. He was a pioneering African American minister, academic, and African nationalist. Ordained as an Episcopal priest in the United States, Cromwell went to England in the late 1840s to raise money for his church by lecturing about American slavery. Abolitionists supported his 3 years of study at Cambridge University, where Cromwell developed concepts of Pan Africanism. In 1853, he moved to Liberia, where he worked to convert Africans to Christianity and educate them, as well as to persuade African American colonists of his ideas. After returning to the United States in 1872, he was called to St. Mary's Episcopal Mission in Washington, D.C. In 1875, he and his congregation founded St. Luke Episcopal Church, the first independent Black Episcopal church in the city. They built a new church on 15th Street Northwest beginning in 1876. And then in Liberia, he arrived in Liberia in 1853. His name appears on an 1859 document signed by citizens of the county of Maryland in Liberia. Uh, yeah, he died in Red Bank, New Jersey in 1898. So that's a little bit about Cromwell. But Prof, this guy, he had an interesting life.
Mhm.
I mean, we have his book, but he had an interesting life because when he started school in New Hampshire, he was
Yeah.
actually pushed out of the school by gunpoint. The people came and said, "You cannot be here," among our people. And
Yeah.
so he left and went to England, and of course he graduated. He got a bachelor's degree um, from Cambridge, and then of course he ended up in Liberia, and as they say, a scholar, a Pan Africanist, or in those days they say a nationalist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Cromwell is that his father was from Sierra Leone. His father had been taken as a 17-year-old from Sierra Leone, and he was from the Temi tribe, and he was taken away. So Cromwell was, in all intents and purposes, a West African. Yeah, yeah. And then in 1861, he and Blighty. Remember when we were talking about how they were trying to get uh, Barbadians and other West Indies,
To go
West
to,
Indians to come to Liberia. He
yeah.
was charged with that as well. So of course, he says he considered himself a citizen of Maryland County, but we're going to discuss his oration. That's what we're interested in. Cromwell 1860 oration was about the English language, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And if I may add, show this, is the English language in Liberia. The annual address before the citizens of Maryland County, Kipamos, Liberia, July 26, 1860, being the day of national independence. And it's by the Reverend Alexander Cromwell, bachelor's, Queen's College, Cambridge, and he's a missionary, he calls himself. And I put this one now, and I quote, "Now I beg you to notice one point. This English, which we are speaking and likewise teaching the heathen to speak, is not our native tongue. This Anglo-Saxon language, which is the only language 99 hundredths of us immigrants have ever known, is not the speech of our ancestors." But I'll move that for now, Prof, and we can discuss the beginning of his speech, where he talked about Liberians almost like the lost tribe of Israel, right? Do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, well, the Cromwell, I call it.
Why does he have to have the same name? Why does he have to? I'm always calling him Cromwell.
He's Cromwell.
Yes,
Cromwell.
I know. Yeah.
Yes. So, you read the speech and you get the feeling that Cromwell was infatuated with the English language. He was all over the place, head over heel, to impress upon the people that English was like gold found.
Yeah.
And he piled on all the superlatives.
Yeah.
Even though, as you said in the beginning, well, he admitted that English was not the mother tongue of Africa and African descent and what have you.
And not only that, but that English had wrought a lot of havoc in the world.
Yeah, well, but the thing about it is he was head over heel, as I said, touting the glory. It's almost, you can even call it an ode, like you, I think, said something, an ode to the English language.
Yeah.
English language has astounding legal precepts. English language has astounding civilizing precepes, and he goes on, and he goes on and on and on. But
when he started, he said that 2 years prior, he had listened to another speech, another oration.
Yeah.
And during that time, he also met a guy, I think a crew guy, who spoke English very well.
Yeah.
And he said, wow, because this guy knows how to speak English, he can mix with civilized people. So he said, if I'm ever called upon to give a speech,
yes,
I will talk about this. So 2 years later, he was called upon to give a speach.
Who knows whether he didn't twist arms here and there so that he would just throw off all these things that he had to throw out there.
Yeah. So let's look at his speech. Let's look at some excerpts and talk about that, and then we talk about the person, about this paradox of free yet unfree, but almost not biting the hand that, but it's almost like the oppressor honors the oppressed. The oppressed honors the oppressor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally beyond my thinking. But okay, yes, like two, Prof.
Well, yes. Before
Okay. Uh-huh.
probably we might want to break that down. First, we see that he sets it up by talking about all the glories and the benefits. Then he pauses and then he talks a little about how that language is different from the linguistic culture of the locals.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then he goes to the third part, which he talks about women and the
Yeah.
need to imbue them with a lot of education that will make them more productive in society, because he feels that an educated mother can be the source of an educated child and therefore a replenisher of society. So
Yes.
first, the importance of English. He breaks in there and talks about the non-importance of the linguistic culture of Africans, and then he goes
Yeah.
on to a sort of setting up a little curriculum for women, so that they become more
Yeah.
empowered to be able to. That's the kind of thing that we have in there anyway. So then you can kind of begin putting up the slides.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing is, when I put it up, I think somebody wrote underneath to kind of challenge it.
Yeah.
We're not challenging. What we're doing is just taking this historical text
Mm.
and examining it. So we're asking you to
You, s- you
come
said
on with us on this journey of examination
I,
of
I'm,
this
I'm,
text.
I'm coming. I didn't pick that up, Jackie, when you said this person was challenging you to say what now that we shouldn't have.
Yes, that all this thing, it brings division, and I said no.
Oh
I mean,
God, what is this sensitivity
you try
about
to, yeah,
division
you
and all
try
that kind of thing?
to know history. So yes,
True.
his second slide. So this is so all these quotes are from Alexander Cromwell. So yes, yes, one he talks about them. Uh he said our very speech is indicative of sorrowful history. The language we use tells of subjection and of conquest, right? But I find this second part very interesting. He said, no people lose entirely their native tongue without the bitter trial of hopeless struggle, bloody strife, heartbreaking despair, agony, and death. Even so, we. So you see, when he was talking about the English language, bro, he talked, he mentioned losses and gains.
Mm.
So yeah, he's saying that when you lose, people don't just lose it; they fight.
Yeah.
He said nobody lose their native tongue without the bitter trial of
Mm.
hopeless struggles,
Hmm.
right? So then he acknowledges that people that
Slavery made
traditional languages,
slavery made them to lose their tongue
yeah,
and then pick up English. Yes.
yeah. He said even so we. So
Yes.
it's the same with us.
Yes.
He says now, pertaining to almost every nation, examine all the old histories of men, the histories of Egypt, China, Greece, Rome, and England. In every case, as in ours, their language reveals the fact of conquest and subjection.
Hmm.
Subjection. But this fact of humiliation seems to have been one of those ordinances of providence. Now let's stop right there first.
They this reminds me, as I told you, this reminds me of a speech that Tubman gave when he and Deetwer clashed, and he almost something close to a martial law he declared in the Butcher Line area, uh, especially with the crews, that slavery is a plan, has been a plan of providence. God ordained it so that they will leave from Africa and go out there and get a training and come back. That kind of providential type of plan, that is what our man Cromwell is. In fact, of course, he came before Tubman, so Tubman, in a sense, was perpetuating whatever Cromwell must have said about the providential plan of Africa and slavery and all that kind of a thing. Yes.
Yeah. So we'll continue with the same slide. He says, He says, I can see because he says,
Which one?
uh, he says,
Oh,
but this fact of humiliation seems to have been one of those ordinances of
yes.
providence designed as a means
Yeah.
for the introduction of new ideas into the language of a people,
Yes.
or to serve as the transitional step from low degradation to a higher and nobler civilization.
Can you see that? Again, the Cromwell is actually, I can't overemphasize that. Cromwell is using a Western lens, to denigrate African culture and all that, to say that whatever they may have learned set them on the path of a nobler civilization. What could be more noble than what he's saying over there, as far as it's being the epitome of real life, we might say, because actually, if you are of low civilization, then you are not of real life. If you are of nobler civilization, as he saw, then of course you are of a better breed. That's what I see over there.
Yeah, so according to him, uh, providence brought them to be subjected, oppressed, so that they can learn English and then attain higher civilization, according to Cromwell. That's what he says.
I should say though that if he had phrased this within the context of travel brings in new ideas, then of course that is a good thing, because even in indigenous culture, it is often said that what a traveler has seen is far better than what an aged person who never traveled has seen. In other words, traveling itself is what? Is education. So it is within that context, one would say, okay, well, maybe he had a point or two, because you cannot be at home so easily and gather a lot of new ideas. If you've traveled the way we all have traveled, it may be, even if you did that through books, new ideas will come to you. Let alone if you physically travel, then you can come out with new ideas. But coming out with new ideas doesn't necessarily mean that you are far more superior than any other person. In other words, it is important, and this is getting into the context of logic now. It is important to, when you make statements, to qualify those statements. If you qualify the statements you make, people tend to listen to you more than if you are making sweeping statements.
It is interesting that as a pan-Africanist, or a nationalist, as they call him, an African nationalist, that he would even have the temerity
Yes.
to even uh, 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 heap accolades
Yeah.
on one of the instruments of his oppression.
Yes.
It was one of the instruments, because he says English language is a language of conquest.
Yes.
And he had been conquered, or
Yes.
his father had been conquered.
Yes.
So it's very interesting that he would he would deign to even say something like that.
Just
Yeah.
flow
So
over with yes.
yeah, but again, it's very interesting, because even Edward Wilmer Blyden, as much as he espoused blackness, Edward Wilmer Blyden, and I have his sorry, Prof, I have his letters right here.
Yeah.
In one of the letters, he was writing England for them to take over Liberia.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Uh-huh.
And you are a pan-Africanist. You those are not things that so they are at odds with the concept of what it means to be free. So okay, so yeah.
They are just combustible confusion. That's what those two, the combustible confusion. They have all these ideas all hitting against one another and what have you, and just trying to eke out a path. And sometimes the path they try to eke, of course, between Cromwell and Blyden. Blyden can just conquer him 3 or 4 times over, because with even all that we're saying that he wrote to talk about, and he was speaking within the political culture when he said, "Come and take us over and what have you," since America cannot do better and what have you.
Yes.
But beyond
Yes.
that, Blyden was innovative in terms of even respecting the teaching of what of local languages in Liberia College. So it's far better than from my point of view. It's far better than Cromwell, with all his eulogizing of English language and see almost no bad about English language. Of course, once in a while he will place in a disclaimer and whatever. But in most instances, he was touting the almost pristine culture of the English language and the English culture.
The one that brings order, he says.
Yeah, the one that brings order. Can you imagine that? That's what. And you're going to bring in a little about pain.
Yeah. But I want to go through the discussion of yeah. So yes, the next slide. The next slide is this one. So now let's talk a little bit, because in his oration, he mentions a lot of people that really that he had listened to. He mentioned how they have discussed things about Liberia, about the indigenous people. So one of the persons that he mentioned is this Dr. Meister, I think Meister, right? So this guy had lived among the Gribble people, and so we will just read the slides. Then after we're done with all of the slides, we'll come and. But this guy, Prof, he not only had he lived among them. This is what the guy wrote, and Cromwell agrees with him, or agreed with him. Listen to this, Prof. So Dr. Wilson, Dr. Leighton Wilson says, and I quote, he's describing the Gribble language. It's harsh, abrupt, energetic, indistinct in enunciation, meager in points of words. It abounds with inarticulate nasal and guttural sounds, possess but few inflections and grammatical forms, and are withal exceedingly difficult of acquisition. So Cromwell is saying this is his description of the Gribble, but it may be taken, I think, or as on the whole a correct description of the whole class of dialects which are entitled Negro.
Okay, let's stop there. The thing about it, that is why the title of a person must be taken with a grain of salt. Here is a guy who has whether he's a medical doctor, he's a doctor of philosophy, we do not know. But here is a guy describing what he describes, tells us that he doesn't know anything about what he's describing, but he wants us to accept him as telling the truth because he holds a doctorate degree. So people have to be very careful about this title. I am a doctorate degree holder, or this person is a doctorate degree holder, or that sort of a thing. People have to be very careful. People have to be very discerning. What he talks is nonsense. He doesn't know even what he's talking about. He might have been among those people, but did not pay much attention to. Because if you differentiate that with what Payne said, you will see someone who really was among the people and really studied the people, so that what he says is clear, is pristine, and what have you. So that is the point I wanted to make, as far as you are you have this academic title, and therefore people by just that academic title should be able to clap for you and what have you, when sometimes what you are saying is nonsense.
So Dr. Wilson said it about the Gribble people.
Yes.
Cromwell says, but it's not only the Gribble people; it's all black languages.
Can you imagine that?
He said everyone that is entitled Negro.
What?
Yeah. So now we come on to what to the second half. He says these languages, moreover, are characterized by lowness of ideas. As the speech of rude barbarians, they are marked by brutal and vindictive sentiments and those principles which show a predominance of the animal propensities.
Can you just imagine that? When are you bringing in Payne? Yeah, let me finish with this one. Anyway, because presenting that in juxtaposition will make people see the difference between what Wilson says and what Payne says. Anyway,
But Prof, this let's just finish this slide. Let's finish this slide. I know you're angry, but let's finish this
No,
slide. The
I'm
man
not
dead.
angry, but I think I want us to see the reality of the descriptions on both sides. Anyway,
You can okay. So now we'll come back to he said again, they lack those ideas of virtue, of moral truth,
what?
and those distinctions of right and wrong with which we all our life long have been familiar. He goes on, he says, another marked feature of these languages, this is the Negro languages now, is the absence of clear ideas of justice, law, human rights, and governmental order, which are so prominent and manifest in civilized country. Lastly, these supernatural truth of a personal present deity of the moral government. Okay, so now, Prof, let's just take it all in. The man says first that it has lowness of ideas. It has animal propensities, right? You lack the virtue of moral truth, the distinction of right and wrong, right? And you don't have any clear ideas of justice, law, human rights, and governmental order. So we remove this, Prof, and we say that's why we do our research. Because if we come to what's his name? If we come to Paine, Reverend Paine had lived with the Gribble people. Reverend Paine had something's wrong with my computer. Reverend Paine had not only lived with the Gribble, Reverend Paine had written about the Gribble. And Reverend Paine says, and if I can quote, he says here that the Gribble has one of the purest forms of democracy, right? One of the purest forms of democracy. And he goes on, Prof, to talk about the Sedibo, which is the House of Representatives. He talks about the Bodia, right, which is the high office. He puts the Bodia as the Bodia, right?
The Bodio,
Yeah, as almost they are almost like the office of high priest among the Jews. He talked about the different types, about the great body. He talked about the government, right? He talked about the seven principal Grebo towns. He talked about the patriarchal. He talked about the constitution of the Grebo tribe is patriarchal, although the government is almost purely democratic. This man goes on to talk about when they get together, they are able to present grievances in an orderly manner, because the high priest or the person who is there, the patriarch, will give you permission to speak. And as I said to you today, when I was talking to Eunice, she said to Boer, she said when they are done speaking, what they would say is, this is where my words end. And then the next person starts to speak. But this guy is saying that the Gribble people have no sense of right and wrong, no law and order.
that's why of course I'm sure you brought him in. I'm talking about Paine in almost in succession. But what I was saying, it was placing those side by side. But the point I made earlier, I want to still stress, which is that it is a danger, especially when it comes to talking about the culture of a people. It is a danger for someone who did not invest emotionally and intellectually in that particular thing to make pronouncements on the people's culture. And that is what we see in the case of Cromwell and Paine. Cromwell, who is quoting a Wilson, who is a doctorate degree holder, as I was saying, whether medical or research oriented doctor, what have you. If you don't understand a people, the best thing you can do for yourself, not even for the people, the best thing you can do for yourself is that I really wish I knew more about these people. I don't know about them, and I don't think it's fair for me to pass pronouncements. How did these people live all those years when they met them, and they didn't have a sense of justice, a sense of law and order and what have you? How did they manage to go through all that they went through? Even in civilized, if you talk about war, even in civilized nations, we are here today and see the kind of destruction that's being done in Europe and all those places there. I'm not talking about World War I, I'm not talking about even World War II. So what he does to even his own color is to say something that he doesn't not know much about. And of course, thank God that Paine came into the picture and was able to lay out things as they ought to be laid out. It is very much important that we don't pass judgments. It is very much important that we just don't take a statement and throw it around to take in a whole group, like you talk about stereotyping and all that. And that's what that's what has happened in the case of good old Alexander Cromwell.
But Dr. Wilson was talking about the group of people. Cromwell talking about everybody.
Yeah, but he is so excited to denigrate anything local African and just hold the flag of English, the English language and all that it was meant to be from his point of view.
And we continue with the speech. Now, instead of a language characterized by such rude and inferior features as these, we have been brought to the heritage of the English language. Negro, as we are by blood and constitution, we have been as a people for generations in the habitual utterance of Anglo-Saxon speech. This fact is now historical. Of space of time, it covers over 200 years. Now, what is the peculiar advantage which Anglo-Africans have gained by the loss of their mother tongue? Now, the man is saying, okay, you know what? People have been speaking English now for over 200 years. But what have we gained by leaving out the traditional African languages and learning English? He coming to tell you what you gained, Prof, by doing this. So here's what you've gained. Okay. He said, in order to answer this query, we must present those direct and collateral lingual elements in which resides the worth and value of the English language, especially in contrast with the elements of the African dialects. Now, English is language, African is dialects. So he's coming to tell us what we've gained by English. And what have we gained? The English language, I apprehend, is a language of unusual force and power. This I know is an elemental excellence which does not pertain immediately. Say, I will present it to you that with the genius and spirit of a language, the English is composed chiefly of simple, terse, and forcible 1 and 2 syllable words, which make incomparable for simplicity, right? So the English language has force and it has power. That's one. The English language is characteristically the language of freedom. Now, listen to this, Prof. He says, I know that there is a sense in which this love of liberty is wrought in the very fiber and substance of the body and blood of all people. But the flame burns dimly in some races. It is a faithful fire in some others. And in many inferior people, it is the flickering light of a dying candle. But in the English races, it is an ardent, healthy, vital, irrepressible flame, and without normal and orderly in its development. The man says to you that English language is a language of freedom. Now, in those groups that are inferior, it can burn a little dimly. But in the English race, this burns brightly. It's the language of freedom. So let's remove it. The language of power and the language of freedom. Prof, explain that to me.
Oh. You say the language of what? The language of
freedom. This is a man who could not go to school because he was black in America. But he's saying to you that the English language is a language of freedom.
Mm.
Not only is it a language of freedom, it's a language of power,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
in the language of power, we can see. Well, what he says over there is an affirmation of the language of the conqueror,
Yes.
language of the conqueror, and uh, they've done the conquering, and even in the very Africa, even in Liberia, they who had the English language now by virtue of being an annex to those who had been speaking English, they obviously had the power. So if you talk about freedom, if you talk about power, of course, they being in the conquering position as the people who just came from America and what have you, obviously they will have the power. Obviously, they will have the freedom to do whatever they chose to do and that sort of a thing. So what I'm saying is that what he says is an affirmation of the environment they found themselves in and what they were enjoying as a result of having the facility of English and therefore being able to interact with the people that were coming from here, there, yonder to kind of exercise business and exercise whatever they wanted to do in the place called Liberia. So yes, it's an affirmation, and it's an obvious affirmation of what he has in mind as far as the English language is concerned: freedom and power.
Okay, let's go to the next one. The more I remark, the English language is the enshrinement of those great charters of liberty, which are essential elements of free government,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the main guarantees of personal liberty. I refer now to the right of trial by jury.
Mm-hmm.
And these are special characteristics of the English language. They are rights
Mm-hmm.
which, in their full form and rigid features, do not exist among any other people.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, in pointing out the main features of the English language, I must not fail to state its peculiar identity with religion. For centuries, this language has been baptized in the spirit of the Christian faith. So, so he says you have trial by jury and you have religion as hallmarks of the English language. So he's naming them.
Yeah,
He's
but the
naming.
thing about it, trial by jury, the thing about it is that our people, uh, especially we talk about Kwa, and I think there are kind of examples in other cultures and what have you. Our people do not grab people and just put them to death. There
Yes.
has to be a council, the council of
Yeah.
the council of elders that come together and have to examine one of the legal maxims in indigenous. They say one mouth has explained. We've got to wait for another mouth. In other words, they've got to look at the both sides of a particular issue, and they don't just grab people and deal with them. There has to be a contestation of who is right and who is wrong before. So that is all the reason why I'm saying that if you do not know about the legal construct, if you do not know about the religious construct of a people, in other words, if you do not know the expanse of cultural interactions and that of a people, the best thing you want to do is to be honest. But if you know
Yeah.
just one facet and you want to use that one facet to kind of expand it over the whole essence of the set of activities of the people, then there is a problem. What he's talking about, listing the the English language and all its benefits and what have you, is just a one-sided thing, and it's a sad thing. Of course, in those days, we are talking about those days and not now. In those days, uh, what they knew about Africa was new from the lens of the Westerner. And to just have propagated that uh, has been one of those things that to this day have been carrying on the stereotypes that people talk about, even from educated people, those educated from the Western part of the world.
Yeah. So it's very interesting that I still can't wrap my mind around how someone who really has suffered is now writing an ode to the conqueror.
Yeah.
That's what it is, an ode to the
Yes, of
conqueror.
course. Yes, of
You
course.
know, and he sees nothing, nothing good. Even though, I mean, in one or two of his papers, he talks about how the settlers and indigenous people should get along and work together. But even in his speech, I mean, we just touched, we just pulled out some things. He talked about this man who was doing devil dances. You know, he talked about this woman who, I guess she used to clean the house, and they told her to come to prayers, and she said, "Oh, I can't come to prayer because I don't know how to read." So he's saying, "Oh, the people." So I guess this could be any language, if it was one that was of the conqueror.
Yes.
If it was French, it would be the same. You
Yeah.
know, English,
Spanish, it
because
will
it
be
is,
the same.
yeah,
Yes, that's right.
it will be the same. You know, so it is the power, according to him, that's inherent in the language
Yeah. And,
that brings about the benefits.
yes.
Uh-huh.
And then, you were making a point where you said in another paper, he talked about the settlers and the indigenous coming together. And the
Yes.
question is, on whose terms? Obviously, it will be on the terms of the settlers, right? On the of the conqueror. I mean, the symbol of the conqueror, the settlers. All right. So what he does in that process is that unless the indigenous bow down to those who have the new ideas now, those who come from the West now, unless they bow down, then of course there isn't any pathway towards bringing them together. That is what is evidenced in what he's saying over there, which is a sad thing.
But that's what he said. He did say that. He said that the English language will bring the indigenous people. He used another word, but they will bring the indigenous people to a place of power.
Yes.
Yeah, because he talked about this crewman that he met on the coast, and how this man could speak English, and he was able to talk with the people on the ship. So for him, there's nothing that the indigenous people lost. Because that's why remember at the beginning of his speech he said lost and gain. But he's saying that the gains far outweigh the losses. You know, and the reason why this English language is there is because of providence, right? Even though it came through slavery, it's because of providence. And I think for me it's interesting to see that you can see how, and even on social media, sometimes when you're talking to people, they're almost like, it's almost like thank God for slavery. You know, because they feel like this civilizing mission. But then you begin to say, what does this civilization entail? What does it mean?
What does
You
it
know,
mean?
what does it mean? And people will say, oh, look at the West is developed. But they fail to realize that the West is developed because of taking over. According to PBS, they took over 12.5 million Africans, and 10.7 survived. So, which means over a million died, 2 million died. But you took 12.5 million, not old men, young,
Robust.
able-bodied men. They say 46% men, 31% women, 24% children, right? So you're telling me that they took these young men who could build Africa to build the West. Now, those 300 years, because if you look at it, what slavery was, between in 1866, right?
Yeah, but
So slavery was
that's
between
from
the
1492 all the way to what we are talking about here.
Yeah, so slavery was between the 16th and the 19th century.
Yeah.
That's 2,000 years, Prof. So that those years, somebody was taking your young, able-bodied people who were supposed to build your continent, and they were building their continent. You know, and so when you say, "Oh, how Africa," yes, we now we talk about the leaders and things like that, but countries evolved, but Africa stood still because the people who were there to transition this country to development was transitioning other countries.
Africa entered the period of nada. not a
Yes,
darkness. That's what it was.
yes. And Prof, when we're talking, I always say, oh, we like to go and do research. But then I started, there's a book, Liberty Exiles,
Mhm.
that talk about it talks about how the West benefited, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, what who benefited? Aetna, the insurance company,
Mhm.
right? They apologized for selling policies in the 1850s that reimbursed slave owners
Uh,
for financial losses when
mm,
the enslaved Africans their own died.
mm,
J.P. Morgan Chase, right? They said between 1831 and 1865, two of their predecessor banks, Citizen Bank and
mm,
Canal Bank, accepted 13,000 enslaved
mm.
Africans as collateral on loans.
And that's happening
Brooks
in the case of
Brothers,
the universities too. What about
yeah, Brooks Brothers.
Georgetown University? Yes, all those places there.
Yeah. So the thing is that when people when they start to say, oh, Africa is not developed, you think about two. Do you know how much development will come if it was 2,000 years?
Yes.
2,000 years of enslavement, of taking away the best and the brightest, young, able-bodied men and women and children, and leaving the old people behind. So when you hear, like he says, oh, English is providence. No, it's not. It's not providence.
It's I mean, I rate him as a low thinker. I rate him as a low thinker, and sometimes that is what infatuation does. In the context of infatuation, you almost immediately are blinded to anything negative
Yeah.
about the person. Is later on you can even talk about it in a simplistic love relationship. When you are in love, there's nothing bad about the person you are looking at. It is after you've left the scene of love that you begin to. It's like you are a drunken fool. When sobriety comes, sometimes it's already late, and that's what. And I'm glad that we are looking at this particular work. At the time
Yes.
he gave it, obviously, because they were even begging for copies of his speech and what have you. You know,
Oh,
and
yes.
at this
If you look at it, they asked him for his speech, and then he started by saying, "Oh, I don't know if I should give you the speech."
yeah, bluffing now. Yes, that's right. So that is what is. And again, as we always do, for his time, for his time, that was the best he had ever done. For his time, that was
Yes.
the best he had ever done to delineate the inferiority of African culture and African language, to delineate that from the language of the noble civilization and what have you. So
Yeah.
that is probably the best he could have done for his time. So, well, as I was saying, well, maybe we want to give it to him for that. But all I'm saying that even at his time, if you place other people like Paine and Blyden, if you place them vis-a-vis himself, we'll find out that those people, even at that time, were great thinkers. Even at that time, were great thinkers, as opposed to his infatuation with English language and heaping all the superlatives of grace and everything on the English language. When actually, right now, if you look at it, that's a buffoonery.
Yeah, but the man wasn't finished. He has a few more to go. He started with
Okay.
the women. So you women, if you're on listening, get prepared to come write comments. Cromwell wasn't playing with you guys. He says it is commanding too, as well as attractive. When used merely as a language of trade, it brings to. Oh no, this is about the language also. He
Yes.
says the acquisition, Prof, of English is elevation.
Yeah.
It places the native man above his ignorant fellow
Uh-huh.
and gives him some of the dignity of civilization.
Uh-huh.
New ideas are caught up, new habits form, and superior and elevating ones are daily increased.
Yeah.
Yes. So it elevates you, he says. He says it elevates you. But then we come to, so he's not done. After he's finished explaining about the about it, he comes to the women, and he acknowledges the important place that women have in the Liberian society.
Mm.
but there's one thing that's holding them back for their full potential. So here it is, and let me get ready. He says, he says, but besides the correct training of the young people, I beg to insist upon the great necessity of special care being bestowed upon the culture of the female mind in Liberia. The mothers, sisters, and daughters of the land are to train the whole of the rising generation, now growing up around us, down forever through all the deep, dim vistas of coming ages. The influence of woman in this great work is deeper and more powerful than that of man, and especially in those years of our life when we are most but no one who looks carefully at the state of things in this country can suppose for a moment that either justice is done to the intellect of this sex or that women in this land feel the burden of obligation which rests so heavily upon them. The latter fact, however, peculiarly affects me. I must confess myself amazed at the general frivolousness of the female mind in this country. It is one of the most astonishing problems of my mind that my mind has ever been called upon to solve. How women can live such trifling, unthinking lives as they do in this land. When I look at the severe and rugged aspects of actual existence in this young country, I find it difficult to understand how it is that Parisian military can maintain such a tyrannous control as it does over the sex from Cape Mount to Palmas.
Hmm.
I do not blame the women so much for this state of things, nor do I forget the somewhat pardonable fact that dress is the only fine art we have in Liberia. The world has been 6,000 years in existence, and I have yet begun to do justice to the intellect of women. Prof, what's wrong with men?
Yes, and you look at that and you think also about the speech that Maud Morris gave.
Yes,
She spoke about the need to pay a lot more attention to womanhood and grooming the intellect of the womanhood. And you can say that maybe he had a point over there, but I think he's overplayed his hand. Uh, you can think about the education of women, especially when for a very long time, women in not only our culture there, but in other places that women had been kept at a lower distance and what have you. But again, that is where we talk about the culture, the local culture, because unlike what others have thought that women were a kind of given the low end of the bargain, in indigenous cultures, at least the one that I am familiar with, the Kwa, especially the Kru, uh, women were never denigrated. Women were never placed at a lower end. Women at any appropriate time were given the due respect and all that kind of a thing. Yes, there might have been isolated cases where some women were not treated right. That would not be something that could be seen as an overarching type of truth. So one has to think about that. But coming back to uh, the comments of Cromwell, we'll see that, yeah, people got caught up in fine dressing and all that kind of thing. But again, it is the men who set them on that pedestal of just being beautiful objects or beautiful things or beautiful individuals, and there's something not nothing more. But of course, as I'm sure you will read later, he talked about the strong intellectual academic education of the woman, so that of course in time, given the fact that women have been seen as the cradle of what best comes out of society, women needed to be well trained to take on that role.
he did say that he did say that they should make a seminary for
Yeah.
women. Yeah, he said they should do a seminary for women so women can, because women are to train the next generation.
Yes. Yeah.
So at least that one that we know.
Yeah.
But he says that women spend too much time bluffing.
Yeah.
Because that's what he says. He said he cannot understand how women can spend so much time, and taking care. They are very frivolous. They
Frivolous.
spend a lot of time talking about fashion and things like
Yeah.
that. So
But
that's it.
let's face it, that has not gone away though.
No,
in,
it hasn't
in the
gone away.
fashion industry, women reign supreme. But anyway, that's more of a little humorous aside. But
Yeah, but also he talked about he
excuse me.
women love clothes. Come on.
What now?
Oh, I was writing something, and I was
Oh,
I was I was, I was trying to put something in the private chat.
okay.
So Prof, another thing is that when he's talking about the English language,
Yeah.
right? One thing also is that as a pastor or reverend, when they went to in one of the notes, when they went to a convention, he was among those who were challenging the others to say they did not want Grebo and other Negro dialects taught
Hmm.
in the schools. They wanted only English taught in the
Mhm.
schools. So this man was not just extolling the English language in what is it called, in
The advancing
the
of the Liberian
speech.
society. Yeah. What?
In the speech, he was carrying things
Oh,
out.
okay.
Yeah, he was carrying things out. Yeah.
And
So so
and
so
and again, what you just said about their refusal to teach indigenous languages and what have you, that's where I am sure that's one area in which he and Blyden clashed, because when Blyden became the president of Liberia College, he insisted upon the teaching of because uh,
yes,
Blyden
yes,
was a polyglot now. He knew so many languages and what have you, and he was confident in
yes.
using those languages, and therefore he wanted such a phenomenon, linguistic phenomenon, established in an institution like Liberia College.
And don't forget, Blyden was more highly educated than um Cromwell.
You mean Cromwell? Cromwell was comparatively more educated as far as formal education is concerned, because he.
Bachelor's degree.
Yes, yes, yes. But Blyden had a high school education, and then through
Yeah.
his own temerity and everything, he was able
He
to,
learned Latin and
yes,
Greek. Yeah.
bring himself on par with a lot of people who saw themselves as so-called well educated and all that.
Yeah. What I was trying to put in a private chat, but it went was it women love clothes according to Cromwell. I was
Mhm.
I was wondering if he was married. It was something that I didn't.
Uh-huh.
If he was married, and
Yeah.
and and if it but was he married? I don't
I
know.
didn't explore that part. I didn't explore that part.
Yeah, I
It's
don't know if he
especially
was married because
given some of his pronouncements here now, it would be a good thing. And that gap, it needs to be filled with information with respect to whether he had a family.
yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that there's a scholarship called the Alexander Cromwell Scholarship for students at Queen's College in Cambridge. So that's good.
Well, why would it not have been if he was much of the gladiators? He was a gladiator in defending the English language. So I'm not surprised that such a scholarship will have been established in his name.
Okay, so yes, almost the last. So what so when he's done with the speech, he says that, okay, even if we educate these people, we teach them English. Is that all there is to it? What comes next? So he's asking this question. He says, and now the question arises: are these people to be quickened by letters to become only intelligent heathens? Are we by contact with them to gain them only an intellectual agonism? Is our influence upon them to touch only the brain? and not the life manners, the family, society? Or rather, should we not, as a nation, take upon us the duty of so training these people that as they receive the language, so they may likewise receive the civilization, the order, the industry, and the mild but transforming influences of a regulated Christian state? So
That's
this is the civilizing mission now.
uh-huh.
The civilizing mission have merged with the Christianizing mission.
Yes.
That in order to be civilized, now you have acquired the English language. Now you have to acquire the norms and the modes of conduct
Hmm.
that accompany this language.
Hmm.
Prof, what happened to you? We can't see your face.
You can't see my face. Oh, is it? Then I have to. Okay, press this in.
Yeah, now we can see you.
Sometimes my back is giving. Yes. Okay. Yes. But again, he talks about if you train the brain, if you train the brain, training the brain is not good enough.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not good enough. But you have to. It's like talking about knowledge. The divide between knowledge and skills. Knowledge is the knowing, and skills are having to do with the doing. So bring them all together. That's what he is saying over there. Yes, of course. You know, if you
Yeah.
talk about if you talk about giving knowledge to someone, then the other part that comes is providing that person the skills. So the blend of knowledge and skills is, I think, what he's talking about there, which, in a sense, makes uh, is tolerable in terms. Okay, it's causing is a kind of, you have the cognitive ability, then you have to have the skills to apply that. Who knows? Yes.
Yeah. So then again, we come back to Cromwell. Cromwell says the spirit of the English language is the spirit of independence,
Hmm.
both personal and national, the
Hmm.
spirit of free speech and a free press
Hmm.
and personal liberty, the
Hmm.
spirit of reform
Hmm.
and development, the
Hmm.
spirit of enterprise, the spirit
Hmm.
of law,
Hmm.
of moral character, and spiritual beneficence.
Hmm.
So this guy,
Yes, that's so. That is the. I again, I will repeat myself in the process that this guy may have had some knowledge, but he didn't. It's like bringing half-baked knowledge about language and culture, bringing that half-baked knowledge of that, and pronouncing upon it that it was the total truth, the only truth
yeah,
that reign in this world. That's what he did over there, and that's, for me, that's the sadness I see about his speech. And that is important for us to also have look at this speech to see how many of our people at the early stage of the nation called Liberia were able to look at Africa within the lens of the Westerner. And
yeah.
there's nothing can be so outlandish and foolish as that processing of information.
Yeah, I guess for me again, I come to the fact that the speech was so at odds
Hmm.
with what he was at the time, or what we thought he was at the time.
Yes,
Because when you we're talking about Liberian history, a lot of people quote Cromwell.
yes,
A lot of people. The man has a book, Prof. Is called The
yes,
Future of Africa.
yes, 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 yes.
You know,
When I
yeah,
was in undergrad school at the University of Liberia, I think I told you, I used to become infatuated with Africana, the African
yeah,
section of the place there. And I read that book. I read that book you're talking
yeah,
about, his speeches and what have you. And some of the things that he said were very much empowering. They were very much impactful, especially the treatment of women in slavery and what have you, passing women on as breeding machines from one person to the other and what have you. All those things affected me. But again, somebody was talking about what's this guy's name, man? uh, anyway, he spoke highly of the person Albert Einstein. Yeah, Albert
Okay.
Einstein. Albert Einstein. He did a lot of good in terms of defending against racism or what have you. But every now and then there will be something sneaking in that didn't comport well with his broader view of anti-racism and all that. So when we talk about some of these people who were minds of their time, we may need to cut them some slack. At some point in time, they will want to kind of celebrate the providential plan, that brought in slavery, so that they will go up there and get ideas and what have you. But sometimes some of these things took a toll on them, and they will slip in something that they had no business slipping in. So overall, I will respect him for some of the brilliant ideas, but then when it came to not understanding a culture and yet wanting to make pronouncement of them, I would just say that that was sad. Yeah, that's what I would
Yeah,
say.
and in his book, he
Mhm.
has several chapters, and one of the chapter is the duty of a rising Christian state
Uh-huh.
to contribute to the world's well-being and civilization.
Okay.
And in that book, he says that all nations were part of God's family, right?
Yeah.
All
Mhm.
the nations on the earth, they were part of
Mhm.
God, his
Yes.
family, right? But he said Liberia has this obligation
Yeah.
to produce men who were cultivated
Yeah.
to have a noble African
Hmm.
nationality, and personality and
Hmm.
nationality.
Mhm.
So for him, this came about with the acquisition of English.
Yes.
That if all of the nations were part of God's
Mhm.
family, the thing is that the countries in Africa, yes, they are part of God's family, but they are lesser.
Hmm.
They are lesser because now what they have to do to have this noble
Hmm.
African personality is to acquire, right, civilization through the language, through
Yeah.
the English language. And when you acquire the civilization,
Hmm.
then you will raise Liberia up.
Hmm.
Yeah. but
Sad
but
thing.
don't forget,
Anyway.
Cromwell was also a capitalist, because Cromwell talked
Yeah.
about how Liberia could sell cotton.
Yeah.
And Liberia, if Liberia sold cotton, they could undermine the southern states, and crash their cotton and make more money. Yeah. So he did know
Yeah.
that there were benefits in Liberia,
Mm.
benefits to be had,
Mm.
and I would hope that maybe in his, I don't know, because he died, what, 86. When
Mhm.
did he die? He died, when did he die, Prof? He died 1898, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he gave the speech 1860. So that's almost like 38 years later before he passed. So I hope that in before then he was able to see that, oh, I think maybe he evolved,
Hmm.
maybe something else
Eh,
took over.
he won't have evolved because at the age level he started making all these silly pronouncements. He was mature enough. He had done college work, and in those days the college programs were rigorous and what have you, and therefore he I guess he had done well. If I say this, people say, "Oh, but who even in an old age will not evolve?" But there are certain things in life that become so uh, well set in an individual that breaking free from them becomes a problem. Except something traumatic happens to that person will not so easily uh, decline the following of certain ideas and what have you.
But he did return to the United States.
Yeah,
He built a church, I think,
uh,
in Washington D.C.,
yeah,
and he taught at Howard University.
yeah,
So I mean he and he's buried in the United States. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Clearly a man of great intellect,
yeah,
but as you say, they were products of their time.
yeah.
I mean, like I keep saying, Edward Wilmer Blyden was this Pan Africanist who was telling England to come and take over Liberia.
Mhm, mhm. Again,
So,
it was the political frustration that led him that idea,
Yeah.
If these
Yeah.
people, remember now, but Biden had been saying, we are in this place here. We have a mission, but we are not following this mission. We are following opulence and whatever it can give and what have you.
Yes.
And such
Yes.
frustration got him probably to have said what he said about, well, if these people who I thought meant anything are not demonstrating that, then why not call British to come in here and just put things in order, as if they alone had the magic wand.
Yeah. Well. I mean, our audience have been very quiet. They
Okay.
haven't contributed to the debate. We had said to them, if you want to contribute about Cromwell said there were losses and there were gains, but the gains outweigh the losses. I don't know how you feel about this topic.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if you have anything to say, you can
yeah.
put it there before we take our leave. And as we say, it's interesting that he saw slavery as providence.
Yeah.
Brought upon by providence. Who would think that?
Thomas saw it at Providence. We should add that there. Thomas saw
Yeah.
President William V.S. Thomas saw it as Providence.
Yeah, he said we did not have the benefits of colonization. What benefits?
Yeah.
You know? But anyway, it seems our audience, they're very quiet today.
Oh, you said
I
they
don't
haven't
think
said
they
anything?
no, they didn't. I just
Wow.
I think Jimmy Eastman said
Okay.
January 1808, a federal law made it illegal to import captive people from Africa into the United States.
Yes.
This date marks the permanent legal closure of the transatlantic slave trade into the
Yeah.
U.S.
Yeah.
And then we posted the one that from PBS that said between 1525
Mhm.
and 1866, in the entire history of the slave trade to the New World, according to the Transatlantic Slave Database, 12.5 million Africans were shipped to the New World,
Yeah.
and 10.7 million made it, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So that means that about 2 million died.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and
So
yeah,
again, uh, my mind ran to the earlier comment you said someone made when you put that thing up. It if it's going to eat those people raw, it's going to eat those people raw. The idea that we should not have a moment to reflect on past thinking and compare it to present thinking and look at the forces and voices that had impacted the changes and what have you. We cannot live in a stationary, a static moment in human existence. Even for the fun of it, or for a continual assessment of the human thinking, of human actions or what have you, we need every now and then to look at these things so that there may be some new idea coming from the study, the analysis, and what have you. So if you are going to be, sadly, over sensitive that we are talking about things of history, then you simply have to take deep breath.
yeah,
Take deep breath. This what we are doing is not really a trivializing type of thing. It is more of seeing how ideas evolve.
yeah, and,
The,
and
the,
yeah,
the thing he had about language, English language, that's not what we have now. That's not what we have now. And so we can understand why changes have come. New knowledge, exhaustive knowledge, has been able to bring us to this point. And that is very much crucial for our own survival.
yeah, and that's what we always say when we say question.
Yes.
Question things, do research,
Yes.
because I mean look at this man. If we can just look at this man talking about the Grebo tribe.
Yes.
eh? Harsh, abrupt, indistinct enunciation,
You
meager
don't
in
even
point
know
of
the
words,
language.
you know and he's saying that they have few inflections, grammatical forms, and then not only is Cromwell agreeing with him, Cromwell said, but that's all the black languages. That's not
Yes.
only that, but not only that, he's saying that our languages don't have any clear idea of justice, law, and
What?
human rights.
Can you just
And when we
imagine
see
that?
things like that, and then what happens? Then you see somebody like Payne coming in to say, look, let me tell you about the Grebo tribe.
Let me
Let
tell
me
you.
tell you.
Yes.
Yeah. And he goes step by
By
step,
step. Step
by
by
step
step.
to explain,
Mhm.
and this is a man who, when you're listening to him, you say, oh, but this man, he has lived among
Yes.
them.
And
Yeah, he has lived among them. He
and
said it has one of the purest, the government is almost purely democratic.
yes.
He said there are 12 tribes. He talks about them. He talks about the Sidipo. He talks about the
The
Bodia,
political
and
structure.
and
The
he
political,
talks about every
yeah.
single one of them,
Mhm.
and how they fit.
Yes.
That there are 12 tribes, just
Yes.
like Israel.
Yeah.
And these people, I mean, so the cultural norms is, and for a global person, you say, oh, but I know this, and how dare Cromwell write
Yeah.
something like this? So
And
it's very
and that
interesting.
is what Payne did is an attestation of the training that people had in those days, the anthropological aspect of it. He is
Yes,
coming from the anthropological aspect of it, which talks about the respect for the various aspects of a culture. He
yes,
is thinking from the point of view of E.B. Tyler, who talks about the importance of culture and the institutions that are found within the culture. Now, all those things are what even Margaret Mead, one of the acclaimed anthropologists, all these things. If you don't know about them, please shut up your mouth. If you don't know about, please shut up your mouth. Do not pretend that you know and you begin to say things that will show you as a buffoon.
yeah, and luckily for us now, these things are published and we can read it, and then we can counteract and say, no, it's not. This
It's
is
not.
not true. So it's very important. I I I I started to think that when Cromwell was giving this speech, his audience must have been only
Yeah, yeah,
secular,
yeah, yeah. Of
you
course,
know,
of course. Those were the people who will
because
come to the table. Yes.
yeah, it's almost like they say Devil Rock,
Uh-huh.
but they name it Devil Rock. It
They
was
name it
not Devil Rock,
because they
Devil
don't
Rock.
understand the
They
importance
don't
of yes.
understand, so and people give names. They give names of their perception to things they don't know. And now you who know, you have to write that name and say, no, this is not the way it is. This is not the way it
And
is. Yeah.
my dear, think about what inspired Chinua Achebe to write Things Fall Apart.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
guy wrote there's a Conrad or something, wrote a book that denigrated African culture.
Yeah. Conrad.
Yes, and Chinua Achebe, yeah, Nigerians say Achebe. Chinua Achebe came into the picture and said, "No, I'm going to teach this person. I'm going to tell him, no, there is order. There is everything
Yeah.
that any important culture should be able to practice and what have you. So don't tell Africans what they know about themselves."
Yeah. And you can see it. You can see the sense of justice
Yeah,
and the sense of order when Okonkwo killed
yeah,
Ikimifuna,
yes,
he had to leave.
yes.
No. When he broke the piece, the yam
He
piece,
two times the week of peace and what have you, all
yeah,
those
he
things,
had to leave.
and and each time he had to suffer a penalty.
A penalty. Yes. Yes.
So
And
there's a penal code.
Oberika and the others came
Yeah,
and broke down his his
yeah,
his
yeah.
hut. That was the
Yeah,
penalty.
yeah. So
That was
there's
the
a
penalty.
penal
So there
code.
was order.
Yeah,
There was order. Yeah. So the people say he who names you, has power over you. So we will
yes,
reclaim our
yes.
names, and we
Uh-huh,
will not allow
uh-huh.
people to say that
Mhm,
our
mhm.
different languages don't have sense of order or justice,
And
but
so
they
you
do.
can even understand in Roots, Alex Haley's Roots, when Kunta Kinte will not take any name but his name,
Yeah.
called me this. No, I am Kunta Kinte. Needless to say, they kind of beat him up. But
even in this speech, he talks about Sassenwood.
yeah,
You know, he talks about the Sassenwood that the indigenous people have. That's order and
yeah,
justice.
that's order
If
and
you look
justice.
at
Yes.
it, that's order and justice. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. Well, Prof. Yeah, but it's interesting to look at the different the one by Detour.
yeah,
You know, he kind of lay out,
yeah,
you know, what it is that the foundation of the country,
yeah,
and what it takes for them to move forward.
yes,
And Gardner, he lauded the fact that this is one of the seven wonders of the world.
yes,
This Declaration of Independence. They
yes,
thought we wouldn't make it, but we
yeah,
made it.
made it, yes,
You know, and then he gives a blueprint.
yes,
You know, Moore did the same. You
yes,
know, she did the blueprint. Cromwell, on the other hand, the blueprint is English language.
hmm,
The English language is the future. It will take you. You know, it will take you far. So we've looked at these orations just to see the I guess the environment of the time.
yeah,
You know,
and the
yeah, what
very
was
ideas
happening.
that were clashing and what have you. Yes,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
again, it is an affirmation of history, an affirmation of the progress of humanity, that over time, generation after generation, will always have certain key ideas, certain key themes that they will kind of wrestle with until the best of the ideas kind of springs forward and begin to order the lives of the people from antiquity to the present time.
yep.
So the war of ideas will always be there. That's what I see. The war of
Always be
ideas
there.
will
Yeah.
be there, and those to take will take. Those will not that will not take, and yet life moves on.
But some of these things, some of these conceptions of languages influence the Liberia setting, in that, you know, gradually most of the languages are not taught in schools.
Yeah.
You know, in South Africa, in their constitution, the languages are their natural resource,
Yes.
and they are cultivated. The students learn it. In
Yes.
Zambia, the students learn the languages. They learn how to write the languages in
Yes.
school. You know, and so these things must also be part of our curriculum
Mhm.
for our people growing up.
And
Yeah.
and another thing, Jackie, the thing about it is that there are two waves of change in Liberia that brought in the importance of language use. When Doe came to power, there are people who before this time had been carrying two Western names and what have you. But when Doe came in and all that kind of thing, some of them started putting in their middle name that was indigenous
Yeah.
language and what have
Yeah.
you, both for jobs and other kind of a thing, or to demonstrate the dual identity they had. And then when the war came and people traveled to other places like Nigeria, Ghana, and what have you, and they saw how those people were invested in their local languages and what have you. Some of those guys who became singers, they were also using a lot of our indigenous languages,
Yeah.
Bele and other.
Yeah.
I know about Tikwa Nimne, you know, the Prokete men of Africa and what have you. These people began to, even the very Sonaga Diabo, our
Yes.
men,
Yes.
yes, they began to use a lot of our languages. So over time, certain things introduce elements that hitherto had not been what welcome and other kind of a thing, and that's very much important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Prof. We're here. Is it raining on your side? Because it's raining here a lot.
The weather is a little cloudy. That's all. Of course, it did
Mm.
rain before 5 o'clock. It did rain, and it was thundering and all that kind of thing, and I was a little concerned, you know.
Yeah. On my side too, there was a lot of thunder. I was like, oh, if the internet and net gonna go, and then we wouldn't have the show. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful.
Yeah. So this is Alexander Cromwell. This is his speech.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't who didn't and get to read it. She'll find it on the web and
Please,
read it. It's called
please.
the English
Yeah,
language in Liberia.
yeah.
You know, get to read it, and you can make up your own mind about
And
that.
see what love does. See what love does. You get
Yeah.
infatuated with a thing and you don't want to see anything wrong with it and that sort of a thing.
Yes, 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 it's true. Yeah. Want to thank you for joining us today. As we say, we know that sometimes Friday is a difficult time because most of that time you are here it is. It's called, I put it here for everybody.
Yeah.
Most of the time, Friday is the time you're wrapping up. But thank you for joining us.
Hmm.
You know, thank you, Prof. Comments.
Yes, my dear. It's always that one or two uh, line comments about, okay, you must not lose sight of history. You must not lose sight of history. That's where the phenomenon of identity, that's where you find it. You must also not lose sight of critical thinking. That is where your your intellectual uh, your intellectual spirit resides. You must always, whenever things are brought before you, do not take them hook, line, and sinker. You must have a time to deliberate. If you've done that on your own, you must try as much as possible to interface with people who may have same uh, mind of intellectual thinking, so that together you all can explore and make meaning, very important meaning of your lives.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us again. And as we say before, you know, whether you have a love of for only English, or you can speak Gribble or
Yeah,
Bai or
yeah,
Bula or other African languages,
yes,
whether you agree with Cromwell or not.
yes,
Again, as we say, we're all Liberians, and
yes.
we always say lift Liberia up.
Mhm.
So until next week, we'll see you and be safe. Yeah. Take care, Prof.
Yes, take care, Jackie.
We are Liberians.